All right, so I think it was Tuesday night. I went downstairs to check on Nif-T and Nito, and unknowingly to me, Rocky, my cat, was right behind me. So I opened the door. She snuck in. I didn't know it. So when I went back upstairs, I shut the door behind me, unknowingly trapping Rocky and Nif-T and Nito in the basement together. And for Rocky, it probably wasn't that stressful, but for the rabbits and for animals who are wired to be ultra paranoid because they're prey for pretty much every animal out there, that was an extremely traumatic experience for them. And you know, I wish I had seen her sneak down there, you know, because I would have gone above and beyond to get her, you know, and get her out of there. But I didn't see her, you know, so I can't really you know, punish myself for something I wasn't even aware of. But you know, leading up to Tuesday night when that happened, there were little signs here and there that Nifty's health might be on the decline. I had noticed for like the past month or two that he was getting pretty skinny. You know, the lionhead breed, they have a lot of hair, so sometimes it's pretty deceiving. Like, you can't really tell until like you pet them, you know, until you get your hands on them, just where they're at weight-wise, because their fur is just so fluffy, you know. It adds mass to them, and a lot of times you can't tell just by looking at them if they've lost a little weight or not. So I've noticed that, like, when I pick them up and stuff, I could like start to feel his ribs. But lionheads live 7 to 10 years. That's their average lifespan, and him and Nito had just turned 7. So once you hit 7, you know, you're considered towards kind of like the end of your line, the end of your rope. And so the weight loss thing didn't really seem that unusual, right? I mean, he's getting older. What comes inevitably with getting older? Losing weight. I mean, whether it's humans, animals, that's just kind of part of the process. Your appetite decreases. That was another thing I noticed. He wasn't eating as much. But again, he was getting a little older. So I thought it was just part of the process. It didn't seem that alarming to me. Looking back on it, you know, maybe I should have brought him in a month or two earlier. I'm not sure how much of a difference that would have made, because there weren't any real, like, obvious signs aside from some weight loss and decreased appetite, things that I kind of consider just natural course in an adult rabbit who's getting close to the end. You know, I mean, granted, he could have lived another 2-3 years, but again, I thought it was just part of the process, and he was just at that point. You know, it's just the cycle of life. You know, you get older, you lose your appetite a little bit, you stop eating as much. So it didn't really strike me as that alarming. So I didn't freak out about it. But the reason I mention this is because what happened that Tuesday night, that was like the first sign of anything real alarming that I saw, and that was with his eyes. So after I went down there, opened the door, Rocky came running out, and I realized that she had been down there for an hour. That's when I saw Nif-T, and I noticed right away something was wrong with his eyes. His eyes looked weird, you know. He always kind of had that deer in the headlights look, you know, because he was just wired to be even more paranoid than rabbits already are. So he always kind of had that, you know, on-edge look, right? Just that on-edge, deer in the headlights look. But this was different. This was like eyeballs protruding a little bit, like out of socket look, you know. Just something was different. Something wasn't right. So I picked him up, I brought him upstairs, and that's when it really hit me. Like, holy shit, like, there's something going on with his eyes here. Looks like they're starting to pop out of the side of his head a little bit. And it was really freaky to see. Like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, to see that. You know, it'd be bad enough seeing that shit in a movie or whatever, but to see it right in front of you, realize it's your rabbit that's going through that. But, you know, I try to be optimistic about it, and I told myself, okay, by morning, they'll be back to normal. You know, everything will fall back into place, so don't worry about it right now. Went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning, went downstairs, his eyes were the same way. So, that's when it hit me. I need to make a doctor appointment. I need to make a vet appointment ASAP. So I started calling one place after another that specialized in small animals, and you know, it was like a vicious cycle of yeah, you know, we don't have any appointments until next week. We don't have any appointments until next week. You can try urgent care though. You know, usually urgent care starts at 6 or 7, and it's first come, first serve, so there could be a couple hour wait. I thought, okay, you know what, I need to get him in. I'll pursue that urgent care route. So come 6 or 7 p.m., I call a few different places. There's a 2 or 3 hour wait. Then I stop and I think about it. Do I really want to put a rabbit who's already sick, who's you know, already not feeling well? You know, the reason I'm saying he's sick and not feeling well is because of his eyes. I mean, that's an alarming thing. That means something serious is going on. That's not like a natural reaction to stress in a rabbit. A natural reaction would be increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, labored breathing, stuff like that. So the eyes, I knew something serious was going on. Did I really want to put him in an environment, in a waiting room with a bunch of other animals and people, and stress him out for 2 or 3 hours before even being able to get him in to look at? No, I wasn't going to go that route. So I decided, okay, let me sleep on this. I'll wake up the next morning and you know, I'll try to pull some more strings. Fortunately, I was able to find an opening at a Lake Elmo small animal clinic that I actually went to have them neutered shortly after I first got them, you know, 6 or 7 years. So they were able to squeeze me in on Friday. So this whole incident with Rocky, the cat and the bunnies, happened Tuesday night. The soonest I could get him in was Friday. I wanted to get him in earlier, but it is what it is. So Friday at noon, I bring him in. I talk to the doctor. I tell him the symptoms he's been having, you know, the eye thing, the weight loss, what I think it was. So I had been doing a little research, and there's this condition called a thymoma. It's basically like a big tumor of the thymus gland, which is in the chest, and it, you know, as the tumor grows, it restricts airflow more and more into the lungs, and so, you know, they stop getting the oxygen they need into their system. And I told him, I said, based on pictures I've seen and what rabbits look like when they have a thymoma, because the bulging eyes is like a classic telltale sign of a thymoma, I said, I can almost tell you for certain that that's what he has. Like I told him, I said, I'm no vet, I'm no doctor, but I'm willing to put money on it that that's what he has. And he said, okay, we'll sedate him, and we'll do some x-rays and do some blood work. I said, okay, you know, if that's what we have to do, let's do it, because I need answers. So when I went there, I had brought Nita with, just for companionship and comfort for Nif-T, because, you know, man, needless to say, any animal, any pet hates going to the vet. It's a stressful experience. Nif-T being as stressed out as he always is, you know, ultra paranoid, I knew he could benefit from any sort of comfort and consoling that Nito could provide. And they you know, they were brothers, bonded from day one. They had spent the past 7 years together, every single second of every day together. So yeah, I brought Nito with for that whole process, and I'm glad I did. So he was there. He was there in the pet carrier while they did the x-rays and the blood work. So I get a call a couple hours later. I go back. The doctor tells me that the x-ray showed there's a big mass in his chest that is definitely restricting the airflow into his lungs, and that he's probably getting very little oxygen. And the bulging eyes are probably causing a lot of like pressure, you know, in the head, like a headache or a migraine for a rabbit. And he said that he could pretty much say for certain that it probably was a thymoma, without sending out the blood work to get specific diagnosis of what it was. He said he probably agreed that it was a thymoma, and at that point he offered options. The options were euthanizing, steroids. He said the steroids could kind of put a quick band-aid on the problem, maybe make him feel better for a couple weeks. Might buy him another month of time, but a lot of times the steroids are more harmful than they are helpful because they're so strong. And rabbits' systems are just so fragile. And him at his age, 7 years old, lionhead rabbits' lifespans are 7 to 10 years old. It could have been very detrimental to go that route. Then there was surgery, cracking the chest cavity open, removing a big tumor in his chest. There isn't a good success rate with rabbits that have to go through surgery like that, extreme major surgery like that. So I wasn't confident at all that he was even going to survive the surgery. And there was radiation or chemo. I've read about like that radiation. A lot of times it is successful at shrinking the tumor, but since the thymus gland is right next to the heart, a lot of times you fry out the heart in the process. And so there's complications immediately after recovery from the radiation due to the scorching of the heart from the radiation. So there were all these different options, but nothing I was comfortable with, nothing I was confident in. There was only one thing that I was somewhat comfortable with, and that was euthanizing, just because I wanted him to be at peace. I wanted him to, not be suffering. And all these other options were just too risky, in my opinion. So that's why I went with euthanizing. But believe me when I tell you, the last thing I wanted to do was say goodbye to Nif-T, and the last thing I wanted to do was separate those two.